Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 33 of the News Just News weekly roundup, where we talk about films, music, video games, but everything under the sun. And you can find everything that we're going to talk about today and so much more on our website, newsjustnews.com. As always, I am Adam. I will be your host today, and I'm joined by the effervescent, I don't even know if that's the right adjective, but the luminescent Lucia.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome back. Let's get into it. It's a hot day today, so we have no time to lose. I mean, we're starting off with a bit of a scary one, so I guess the blood's already going to be pumping anyway. Tell us, so Hollywood, creepypastas, they're kind of digging into them, aren't they? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, it'd be nice right now to be inside of a cinema actually, because at least we'd have aircon. It'd be better than this. But yeah, so you said it right. So we have seen lately a new trend with movies coming out and movies being produced of studios basically tapping into viral internet horror stories, which are known as creepypastas. They have been around for ages now. I remember, even in the early days of the internet, creepypastas were a thing that were kind of like starting to, become more and more famous, especially on like certain platforms like Reddit and 4chan specifically. And now it's like something that somehow made it to cinema. So like more and more studios are getting the stories from the internet and then they're making a theatrical version of it. And there are two movies specifically that have grossed like a lot of money recently, which were Obsession and Backrooms. And both of these are they kind of like put the spotlight on YouTube specifically and YouTube creators. Obsession is not based on creepypasta, but it is directed by a very young director, and he is a YouTuber, so like a YouTube creator first and foremost. Whereas Backrooms, which has been a massive success in the past few weeks, is actually created by a filmmaker that was first a YouTuber, and he actually created a YouTube series on which he then based the movie. And he's only 20, first of all, which is mind-blowing to me, absolutely insane. And I feel like it's very interesting to see how we are now, like getting into that sort of inspiration more. It wasn't something I would say, there's something that studios used to do a lot before. We know, for example, that there are two movies now being produced, one of them being called Sirens and the other one being called The Mandela Catalog. And both of these are based on creepypastas. In the past, we've had, stories such, for example, the Slender Man, which is something that everyone knows about. That was also a creepypasta. And all of these stories are kind of like based on what they are now calling analog horror, which means that they are using kind of like old school analog like products and means of communicating stories that are based on an older way of the internet, kind of like how internet used to be, but also how like just general media used to be. So they are making these new movies, but they're also using, for example, old tape recorders or old video cameras. I feel this is like just a general trend that it's very important for Gen Zs in general, like, with the rise of old film cameras, old vlog cameras that are now massive and super expensive and impossible to find, where like, us old millennials can just like open like a drawer and you'd find like 10 of them. And I feel like this is interesting to see how it also made its way into cinema, because they are making these movies in which they are using, like old footage or things that used to be kind of like very real and very, just like daily reality for loads of people. And now they're being seen as kind of like something, mysterious and scary. And I feel like that's because it represents kind of like an older day of the internet, where internet was more like mysterious and something that you wouldn't be able to access just as easily as you do it now. Maybe one of the first examples of this was the Blair Witch Project, which was a movie that came out, in 1999, almost 30 years ago. But in that sense, that was kind of like, I feel, kind of like a movie that created a whole genre, that it's basically based on, first-hand experience of these characters just basically telling their own story from, you know, using a vlog camera and then just like walking around and being killed around. And I feel like that was just like the beginning of all of this. And now we are getting back into that tendency, that trend. And I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. This seems like the culmination of quite a few trends. I think, especially YouTubers and sort of like new media stars are interacting a lot more with old media. Like, Markiplier, I think, did a film. Like, he released a film, so like YouTubers getting into the film scene and the movie industry seems to be a really big thing. And as you were saying with analog horror, I think that's definitely a thing. Like horror, I mean, it's always been. I feel like horror is such a genre where it just has the tendency to have, I mean, as you mentioned, like Blair Witch, and I was also thinking like Paranormal Activity, these very sort of low profile, low budget movies, which are complete breakout movies, and they get catapulted on the box office, and it really seems to be horror that does this. I guess I was gonna ask, like, why, I think particularly horror. So um why do you think specifically horror is the genre that they've sort of attached to?
I think it's because like it taps into, I don't know, like for me specifically, at least, I think it's like very unexplicable in the sense that, for example, when you see like an old footage from like CCTV, for example, or you know, even for Paranormal Activity, obviously it was just like a tiny little camera attached inside of the room, and because you can't really make like you can't make out exactly what's happening in the room, and the image that is shown is kind of like fuzzy and not really clear. I feel like that gives you like a sense of dread because you can't really tell with your eyes like what's going on, and you kind of just like, in a certain sense, you see some of it, and then your imagination brings you to kind of like try to complete the image that you're not seeing fully to have an idea of what's going on. And that makes it so much scarier because it's like you are imagining things based on a very like you said, like low profile, low quality image. So I think horror kind of like, yeah, like taps into that because it gives the possibility of the like to the audience to kind of like imagine more and kind of like expand into what they're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I think with creepypastas and stuff, I mean, I'm trying to think. Obviously, Slenderman. Like, I remember Slenderman. I remember Ben Drowned. Did you know that? Like the Nintendo one where like he died, and there was the one with it was like the bleached face, and that was like
Oh, God.
it was the screen scare that would be on videos. So I just feel like creepypastas, especially, like we've been telling, just like as humans, we've been telling ghost stories and scary stories for like hundreds and thousands of years, like, and then creepypastas were very much like the early internet way of like telling ghost stories. So it's so cool that now we're sort of going back on that and we're telling like ghost stories from the internet and then going back to like film and stuff to
Yeah.
yeah, to show those and depict those stories, which yeah, it's so cool to see. um I mean, let's get on to something lighter though now. A lighter film, my favorite kind of film. Just a easy watching chick flick, teen chick flick. Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging. I Everyone, like, this is such, I mean, I'm gonna get into it, but this is just such a noughties teen cult classic, I would say. And the good news for everyone in my generation, they are making a TV series. So I saw the casting call for this. Like, all my friends were sending this around. They had to close the casting call for this on July 6th early because there was phenomenal demand. They quoted phenomenal demand, and I'm not surprised. So Yes, Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging is getting a TV series. They've said a major streaming platform, probably Netflix, who knows. But yeah, if you don't know Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging, it's based on. So originally, it was a book by Louise Renison, released in 1996. Unfortunately, the author's passed away now, but it was an international. Well, yeah, it was an international bestseller. It was originally called Angus, Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging, so that's what the book's called, and then the film was called Perfect Snogging. I think maybe from Full Frontal is probably a bit too much for for films, but yeah, like that's another thing. So there was the film in 2008, which starred Georgia Groom as the titular, well, as the title character, Georgia Nicholson. So it's about Georgia Nicholson is this 14-year-old girl. She's funny, but she's also quite flawed and awkward in that way that all teenagers are at the beginning, and it's just lovable. You see her navigate teenagerhood and what to do with boys and how to make friends and keep friends and navigating social situations. And the film was actually Aaron Taylor Johnson's breakout role as the sex god Robbie. Sex god is from the book. I'm not just saying that. But yeah, I adore that movie. That movie is in just like my little basket of of like weirdly. I think there was so many like British school movies back then, like Saint Trinian's, Wild
Mhm.
Child. Like it was such an era, and I eat it up now. I love it now. But yeah, as I was saying, I mean, obviously it's got songs in it. It's saying about full frontal snogging, like Robbie's a sex god, and this is like a teen book. So obviously there was a lot of controversy at the time. So I'd be interested to see how the TV series deals with this. Obviously it is about like dealing with teen sexuality, and there was like backlash at the time. I mean, even now, like with the book bannings, like in the US and the new laws on what books can be in schools, like this is one of the most banned books in the US, which is just mad because it's so twee and British. And the author, when she was still alive, and obviously she got backlash even back then, she wanted this to be a book that was about getting girls talking, about their sexuality and like what they like and what they don't like, and like even back then, so Louise Renison, she like was warning against like the proliferation of pornography and how it showed as men in control and like a lot of things to do with that. And so this book, especially for teens, instead of teens seeing like pornography and getting that well, not sex education, but a bad sex education from that, I think this was sort of like a better way into it because it was a very authentic portrayal of it. But so I would definitely be interested because obviously if it is Netflix, they've done sex education, they do definitely know how to deal with that teen sexuality genre. But yeah, I'd be interested. Lucia, have you seen this film?
So I haven't seen the movie, which I know it's a massive loss on my side because every person I've ever met from this country has told me to watch it because it's such a classic. But I will be watching the movie, and I would be interested in watching the TV show. Definitely, I feel like the British have always been really good at doing this kind of like you said, like teenager movie that it's educational, but at the same time, like really funny. And also just like a very good representation of what it means to be a teenager and just going through that whole phase of your life. When you were talking about this movie, I was thinking about a TV show that I feel like was also really good with this, and it was My Matford Diary. I don't know if you've seen it at the time.
I, I I think I was it was a little bit I was a little bit too young for it, but I have seen like the clips. I know the gist of it. Yeah.
I remember that was really good, and then obviously Skins being just like the major example of all of this. I am also interested in seeing how they're gonna be dealing with it. If it's Netflix, usually, like you said, like they've done Sex Education, and that was pretty good, at least the first couple seasons. But I feel like it depends on which side kind of like they want to land on, in the sense that if they want to make something that it's, going to be controversial and they know it's going to be controversial, then they might, just make it more realistic and just maybe do something that it's kind of like what Skins was, or what kind of like Euphoria was, in a certain, even though they're very completely different shows. But if they kind of want to make something that it's more kind of like pure, something that it's more less controversial, then they might just take a step back a little bit. And it would be interesting to see how faithful they're going to be to kind of like the style of the original. And I'm hoping it's as faithful as possible to that, because yeah, it's classic. Even though I haven't seen it, I know it's kind of like yeah, like a very important movie for that generation and a classic.
Yeah, it's one of them where it's kind of odd because I mean I guess that's what a cult classic is where like it, I was looking and it didn't. I mean, it was only had like a British release basically, and
It's
it
a
kind of had
cult.
mixed reviews. Yeah, it had
Yeah.
mixed reviews. Like it had like a little small-ish UK box office release, but and like everyone knows this film in the UK, at least in my generation. So yeah, I think it'll be so cool to see.
I feel it doesn't matter if the movie has been successful or not. Like if the movie is considered to be, a cult in a certain generation, then it will be watched no matter what. Like I'm thinking, for example, Submarine. I don't think that, made a lot of money in the box office, at least. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it was released just like in a very small market, but still is considered to be like a classic movie, of like, a certain, it represents like a certain age, a certain era in our teenage years, or in the UK. So I feel like it doesn't really matter if it's been successful or not, as long as it's beloved by the audience.
Yeah, definitely. I would be interested to see as well with the TV show whether they'll keep the sort of noughties, late noughties, no, late 90s, early noughties vibe, or whether they'll make it very modern and update it. I mean, they probably will a bit. They'll probably have to, but I don't know. I'm sure people will complain of the nostalgia value
Either
of
way.
that. But yeah. Well, this is like fully the casting call. It opened, and then I think like days later it closed. So we don't know anything else until then. But if you want to keep up at home, for those watching, with the news on Angus, Thongs and Perfect Snogging TV show, I will be trolling for it. Don't you worry. We'll be talking about it again. So make sure you keep up with newsjustnews.com for what we've spoken about so far, movies, TV shows, and everything else under the sun. So we've gone through movies, TV shows. Let's talk about some games. So we did touch on this a little bit last week about digital discs, but actually a Japanese game designer has sort of warned against it. So tell us what you're saying, Lucia.
Yeah, so as you were saying, we did talk about it a little bit last week, and I feel like this is mainly for gaming, but it also applies to movies, to music. So it's kind of like something that involves anyone who's ever enjoyed anything, I feel, or just in general. But yeah, basically, the game designer and game creator, Hideo Kojima, spoke. Obviously, he's famous because he created Metal Gear Solid, Death Stranding. So, really famous games. And he had warned about this in 2021. So he did say at the time that not owning like a physical copy of any media product, which could be, like I said, like an album or a film or a game, inevitably meant that we are always at risk of losing that work of art and not be able to access it, no matter the time or no matter like the subscriptions that we pay to access certain products. And now that, Sony, like we said last week, has announced that from 2028, new releases are only going to be released for PlayStation in a digital format. he basically spoke just recently at a film festival in Rome, and he basically gave his, "I told you so" speech, because he said that he found it really sad, and he thinks that it's something that we are inevitably heading towards to, and that it's going to be inevitable. And he said, because I'm like so sad about this, I'm trying to collect, my favorite games, my favorite albums, my favorite DVDs, like Blu-rays, so that I know I can always access them at some point. Because obviously, before it used to be a situation in which you would pay for a subscription, and then you would know that you're going to be able to access a certain piece of media on that subscription as long as you pay for it. But he also underlined an interesting thing, which is the fact that that doesn't really guarantee you the ability to watching something, because to be able to watch something, because there are behind, like deals and permits, and certain countries might be able to show a certain product for a certain period of time, and then like after 6 months maybe they don't have that deal anymore with that production house or whatever, and they have to get rid of it. And then even if you pay a certain subscription, you won't be able to access that media ever again, unless it's like being brought to a different platform. And he was saying just this. He was saying that changes within a certain catalog in a subscription is a consequence of this, and it basically it doesn't guarantee us anything. And for that reason, he was saying, yeah, that the only way forward to him was like to try and collect as much as possible, and then be able to have like a personal catalog, so that you can always access what you like. And obviously he's right, but at the same time it's that's very disconcerting. And just the fact that we have to spend more money to kind of like own what you really care about, because you might not have it ever again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we were saying like it's scary time, sort of. I mean, I think with gaming, this sort of with Sims series. So obviously, I'm into the Sims. I've spoken about that on here before. But I feel like that sort of. I mean, you can obviously Sims physically still exists, but it's. I mean, for me, it's just easier to download it. So I've always been quite on the digital side of things, but that sort of stung me. Of it's harder when they stopped the official release of those games. Like Sims 1 and 2 for a long time, you couldn't buy it online, and things like the Sims Medieval, like you had to sort of get them physically because it wasn't available online. So this is like, and I think this is going to be like the next step of that. I do wonder what direction this will go in terms of like laws and politics and stuff. Like I think we've had it before. Like remember the NFT boom like a few years ago? So it's like we already know that like people will buy digital items and there will be some kind of ownership to them. So I wonder if that's sort of the direction that we'll go, especially legally, like whether there'll be laws in place of once you buy something and it's specific, there might be a law that's if you buy something like a game and it's digital, there will be some sort of ownership of that where you have, the company basically has to guarantee it to you, like sort of in a way like an NFT, so it does belong to you. Because at the moment there is that legal gap of, you don't actually have it.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if that's the future we're heading to, or if we are just going to keep on the way we're going and you're not going to be able to. But yeah, I think that's definitely to see. And like I know politicians, like I can't remember if I mentioned last week, but Mélenchon, like the French politician, like I think this is a thing that is starting to enter, people, discussions and stuff, and it's not just, gamers talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, just the fact that you're paying for it to get to get a digital copy, that doesn't mean that you own it. And I think that is just then what I'm paying for. Like I'm just paying to use it for a certain amount period, but then it's it's not mine. So it's something that could always like be revoked for you. I feel like it's the same on streaming platforms. For example, I did in the past pay to like buy a movie on Amazon, for example, And I know it's still there, even though it's been a couple of years. But what if that movie at some point just gets taken off the platform? Then the fact that I paid for it, to buy it, to actually own it and not just rent it, um, didn't mean anything, because at that point, then it would just be not mine anymore. But then again, I'm also thinking about physical media in the sense that it's nice to have it, and I feel, it's a good like collecting. If you like collecting things, then collecting the media that you like is also really good. But for movies specifically, I always worry about the fact that right now we are able to access DVDs, obviously, and Blu-rays, because we have the devices that allow us to watch that kind of stuff. But then what if at some point even those devices are not going to be up to date anymore? Like VHS used to be. Obviously, I still own a lot of VHS, but I don't have anything to watch them on. So what if that's going to happen as well at some point? That's really terrifying to me, because that means I'm buying the stuff, but then I'm still not going to be able to access it.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, what if there's gonna be like a new physical media, and then it's like, oh, like you can't, all your old stuff is incompatible now as well. So
Yeah,
oof. Well, we'll
it's just
see.
scary.
It's scary, and I think if we were a monkey, we would get given an orangutan,
Yeah.
and that a certain monkey punched the monkey. In fact, it's his first birthday. I think that's so cute. So
Yeah.
yes, Ichikawa Zoo have said it's Punch's first birthday on July the 26th, and they are hosting an exhibition for him. So it's called "Hang in There, Punch." Messages from everyone. So they're basically all of the birthday cards, like all of the messages from around the world that people sent. Because obviously he went viral last year for being like this little tiny baby who lost his mother, and they gave him an orangutan stuffed plush, which you can actually see mine here. It's not the original. um, and so yeah, or they're gonna display all the love that Punch received for his birthday, and you can actually still send a card until July 15th. So maybe we'll have to send a news just news one, and we can feature it. But yeah, some lovely light news to end on.
I'm hoping someone will be there to like read all of the different cards to Punch, so that
Ew, I
he
would
knows
have,
that it's going. Yeah, he knows that he's loved. I hope that they can do that for him.
yeah. When they teach, they need to like like that monkey that could do sign language. They need to teach him
Yeah,
language so that they can like tell him everything that's in messages.
absolutely.
Yes. So happy birthday, Punch, and thank you for joining me, Lucia, as always.
Thank you, Adam. Thank
And
you.
thank you at home for watching. You can see all of our previous episodes. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get all of them in the future. And check out newsjustnews.com. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.